What's up? This may or may not have been not our first try, and we might have been interrupted by a dog, but we're here now. So, welcome back. Sorry that we were off for a week. We had family in town for Easter and got the awesome opportunity to celebrate an amazing holiday where we get to worship our risen Savior. And so, I hope you guys had a great Easter. We're back. I know we went a little off track the week before that with our special guests, but we are back on the fruits of the Spirit. So today we will be talking about the next two fruits of the Spirit, which is peace and patience. I am not saying that because we both show those really well, although she is very patient. I am not always very peaceful. That's just the ones we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to go ahead and read our passage, and then we'll get into it. So I'll read it for those who forgot after, I know, a couple of weeks does a lot to y'all's brains. So here we go. We have Galatians 5:22 and 23, which says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law." So we looked at love and joy. We talked about that. Now we're going to be looking at peace and patience. Peace is what I'm going to be talking about, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about because it's one of the places that I feel like God works in me a lot, and so I just love to be able to talk about it. I feel like I have a lot of situations in my life where I can do a really poor job of being peaceful, and so it always encourages me when I talk about peace to do a better job of getting in his peace. And I have one of my favorite passages that I want to share on the topic, and it's one of the ones that has been very crucial for me, and I love that we're talking about this again because it's really I've been and kind of had a rough week last week for work and all that kind of stuff, and so that definitely got in my head, and so it was really cool to be able to come back at the end of the week and the beginning of a new week and just be able to feel God kind of spark the fire in me again. We're getting closer to our We Are conference, which I'm super excited about, and so for me, I'm just feel really on fire tonight. I'm really excited about this video and going over this topic, but I want to share with you a verse that I love, and it comes out of Isaiah, and it's Isaiah 26:3, and I know it in ESV really well, which is, "You keep him in perfect peace, him whose mind is stayed on you." It's one of my favorite verses. I love the context. I love the idea of being in perfect peace, and I love the idea of how we are in perfect peace when our mind is stayed on him, and that's what I want to touch on. I will read the NASB version because I like it too. "The steadfast of mind you will keep in perfect peace because he trusts in you." And I like this because I feel like it pairs really well with the ESV translation, which here we're getting a look at a steadfast mind. So like steadfastness, you think of steadfastness, you're going to think of something that's continual. It doesn't give up. It fights through hard times. Like that's steadfast to me. Like steadfast is somebody who doesn't give up. Steadfast is the idea of not giving up. And then on top of that, when you get that perfect peace is because he trusts in you. And it's like that idea of when you're trying to stay your mind on Christ, you have to be trusting. And to me, that's where we find that perfect peace. I heard a Billy Graham sermon the other day that I really loved, and he was talking about how if we were winning the battle in our mind, our lives would look totally different. But what we can struggle with is we don't stay our minds on Christ. Like we don't have a steadfast mind. We don't keep our mind on Christ. What we will do is we will allow our mind to drift off into whatever's going on in our day-to-day, whatever we're noticing around us. And then what happens is, you drift off into work mind, or you drift off into school mind, or you drift off into, family mind, or friend mind, or spouse mind, or girlfriend mind, or boyfriend mind, fill in the blank. It's when you get in that situation, that's the mindset you start to have. Or like, let's say you're just driving in a car. One of the things Billy Graham talked about in his sermon that I really liked was he was talking about how much time we spend with ourselves to just think. Like think about all the alone moments you have or the quiet moments you have. You are alone in a sense with your mind, which means if your mind is not stayed on Christ, it extremely affects you. And so it's something I was doing really well when I heard that sermon, and I have done poorly, and I plan on doing better again after having this moment to kind of put me back on track, is just the idea of like consciously thinking about where I'm staying my mind. Like, am I thinking about Christ right now? And like, it was really cool. A vivid moment I had was we were at the Wichita Thunder game, the hockey team. And it was really fun. There was a little concert by a Christian artist afterwards that we sat through, which was awesome. But at one point, when I was going to get me and Lenan some lemonade, I was literally just like walking through, and I was looking at all these people, and I was thinking about these people, and just like, I wonder what they're going through. Like, I wonder what she's going through. And there was a moment where I was walking past, and there was a bunch of like the like cheerleaders or whatever they are for the for the Wichita Thunder. And I was just thinking to myself, and I was just like, it makes me sad, like how much brokenness there is around sporting events, and like everything that seems fun, there always has to be something wrong, I feel like, in our world. Like, it has to be alcohol, or it has to be something inappropriate, like, for a lot of people to have fun. And it just really convicted me, and I was like, I wonder what would change if we all stayed our minds on Christ. Like, if everyone just who said they were a Christian was actually staying their minds on Christ, what difference would that make? And it really convicted me in the moment. And so I would like to encourage you guys, is one of the beauties that comes from peace is you won't find peace outside of Christ. Like, you will go throughout your day, and just like my last week where I was not stayed on Christ in my mind, and I was stressed out, and I didn't even work that much. That was the biggest problem. Is work didn't go well because I didn't put in a lot of work. I had one day where I didn't feel good, and then I just, I had other days where I just didn't put in as much work as I would have liked, and that just, it took away all of my peace. Like, I was more stressed out than I had been previously, and it so quickly changes from being peace to being anxiety and stress the minute you take your mind off of Christ. And I used an analogy one time when I was talking about peace that is really important to me. And it's the idea of when you're around Christ, like, you can't help but be peaceful, because peace isn't something that Christ just hands out. Like, the fruit, when he's talking about the fruits of the Spirit being peace, this is when we're close to Christ. Like, it's not something that Christ is like, okay, you've done good enough. Well, here's a little bit of peace for you. Like, that's not how it works. If you are in the proximity of Christ, he is exuding peace. Like, there's peace all around him. He has an aura of peace to where when you're with him, you can be like Paul and Silas in prison after being beaten, singing in peace and singing those hymns. Like, that doesn't come from you being strong enough or experiencing enough. It comes from you staying your mind on Christ and being close to Christ in your life so that you can experience peace in unpeaceful situations. And so that's just what peace means to me. With that.
Well, how do you keep your mind close to Christ and in peace?
I love that question. It's a very good question. I listen to a lot of sermons. Mm-hmm. I only listen to Christian music. I think that's key. I think when I am like go down a rabbit hole on YouTube or something like that, or if I've watched a lot of movies and not gotten into sermons or anything throughout the week, it definitely takes me out of that. Mm-hmm. Even for me, like, I like to play video games and I like to play basketball. So if I stay in those environments and I don't get into like the word, obviously I read my Bible, but if I'm not doing things outside of like my normal stuff, because normal stuff you can still get into routine even if you're doing something good. Like, if I'm not listening to those sermons and stuff like that, and I'm not taking anything in, I will always get off of it.
Yeah, because it's like what you do affects you, and
right.
It's like you are what you eat. Like 100%. You are what you listen to. You are what you fill your mind with.
It's a lot easier to spew out garbage when garbage is always being put into your mind.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the big thing for me is I want to surround my day with Christ. And I mean, if you go into the business world, and this is what my people say at my job is, you need to be reading these books. You need to be listening to these sales podcasts because that makes you better. Well, it's the same way with Christ. And I just happen to choose Christ over sales because I find that more important. Is I could be a greater salesman if I put the time I spent with my sermons and my Bible into a sales book or something like that. I think I'd probably be a heck of a salesman. I was like, but I'm okay with giving up some of that to be in this, because to me, being successful without peace is a horrible way to live. And I'd much rather have peace any given day. And so, yeah, absolutely. Just fill your mind, fill your time with Christ. Do not let yourself be able to walk into a room and Christ not be there with you. I feel like that's where it gets really dangerous. When you can isolate yourself from Christ, that's when things go wrong. Good question.
Thank you.
All right, your turn.
Okay, so I have patience. Nope. Yes, I do. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why I was like, wait a second. No, I don't.
She had a totally separate thing prepared for self-control.
Yeah, I did. I actually have self-control and gentleness and faithfulness and all those ready.
Linnea needs a lot of self-control, so.
Anyways, okay. Patience. I think patience and faith go hand in hand. Like, I think if you have faith, you have to be patient. And if you're patient, you have faith. Because the reason why I say that is, so Psalms 25:5 says, "Lead me in your truth and teach me. For you are the God of my salvation, and for you I will wait all the day long." And so I think our driving force in having patience, and I think you can have patience in good seasons, and you can have patience in bad seasons. And I think they're both handled the same way. Like, you can have patience in a good time of life, but you're still waiting for something. Mm. Like with us. So, like, our life from the outside and most of the time from the inside is good. Like, we really don't have much to complain about. Right. But, like, we're still, like, I'm still waiting. We're still waiting to have kids. Like, that's a patience that we're having. So life can be good and you're still waiting for something. Right. And I think what drives that is the truth that, one, God has goodness for us. Like, we were made with a purpose, and it's like the Isaiah 29:11, like, we are created, like, I have a hope and a future for you. Right. So that's why we can be patient, is because we know your truth, and it will teach us, and that will motivate us to wait for you all the day long. Yeah. And then in hard seasons, when life is bad, life is terrible, and you can wait and have patience because you know that what you're in is not an everlasting thing. That, like, what you're going through cannot take away your salvation. Right. It's like the Romans 8, like, nothing can separate you from the love of God. Mm-hmm. And so I like how in this one verse it talks about both. Like, you have the truth, and that's also in the bad times too. You have truth that you can hang on to, but it's your salvation that can't be messed with. Right. And that's your hope, that's your faith, that God is going to carry you through whatever season, so then you can have patience through that. Absolutely. I think another reason why I think they go hand in hand is because patience is seeking after God when you don't know the outcome. Because, like, if we knew what was going to happen, then we wouldn't have to have patience, because we already knew, and we'd be like, okay, cool. Right. Like, we know that that's coming. I'm not going to worry about it. Mm. It's the patience because we don't know a lot of the time. Right. And so I think that that's where the faith comes in. Like, you have to have faith if you're going to be patient. Right. And if you're patient, it's because you have faith. And so, yeah, that's what I like about patience. It's really hard. I'm not very good at being patient sometimes.
So let me flip your question to me around on you. Let's say I'm a person, which I kind of am, who struggles with patience. And how do you find patience in the times where patience is not easy? Without just saying with faith, because obviously we discussed that. But so how do you find that faith? So how do you build a faith, or how do you maintain a faith that endures patiently? Unscripted questions.
I think you grow in your patience when you grow in your confidence in God. Mm. Because you know...
Keep going. I like that.
I'm trying to figure out how it needs to come out. I don't understand, I think that, like, the more that you walk with God and the more that you see him working in your life and the more things that you see that he does for you and for others and all of your good moments and your bad moments, like, he's not going to fail. There's not, like, one day he's going to be like, oh, well, sorry, like, I don't know. You grow in your confidence. And it makes being patient a little bit easier because you know that you're striving for something that can't be taken from you. And I think that patience, I think the reason why patience is hard is because we have an earthly mindset. We have an earthly goal.
Right.
Like, we want to be in the next season right now. We want to do this right now. Or we want to get out of the season because it's really hard.
Right.
And we have an earthly mindset. And we need to look to what is unseen. We need to have that kingdom mindset of, like with Paul, I'm sure sitting in that jail, he had a little bit of confidence, like, I'm sure God's going to get us out of here.
Right.
But, like, I don't know when.
Right.
And so he had this confidence because he's seen what God can do in his life. But he didn't have to know when because he had the faith. So,
Right.
sorry, I went back to that. But
Right.
he
No,
had
absolutely.
the faith because he's seen what God has done.
Right.
And so I think part of it is being in your word. Patience isn't going to come just like that.
Right.
It's really hard.
Yeah. Build it.
But I think it gets easier. I mean, same with all these fruits of the Spirit. They all get easier when you draw close to God.
Right.
You have to be in proximity.
Yeah.
You can't be super far away from him and expect all of these things to come like that.
Right.
So I think it's just spending time with God, growing in confidence, and yeah, I'm trying to think of a third point.
I like the idea of spending time because you spend time in the good times so that you can prepare for the bad times. You build that relationship when it's easy so that when it's hard, you don't have the same reaction and you're prepared. Now, it's hard because some of you guys might be in a situation where it's hard now, and then you're hearing this and you're like, well, it's already hard, so I already missed that chance. And so it is harder for you. I'm not gonna lie, it's harder to build that relationship once you've already hit the hard times, but it doesn't diminish what that relationship is. I like this. Philippians 3:2 and 3 says, beware of the dogs, beware of the evil workers, beware of the false circumcision, for we are the true circumcision. And it's talking about, that's the idea of, it's not what we do, or it's not a ritualistic thing. It's Christ who does this for us, is what he's talking about when he's talking about circumcision, because that's a Jewish thing. Who worship in the Spirit of God and take pride in Christ Jesus, put no confidence in the flesh. And that idea that, he goes on to say, although I myself could boast as having confidence in the flesh. But he's saying he has all these statistics. He could name off everything about how great Paul could be if you looked at him as a Pharisee. But he's like, that means nothing because I don't have confidence in this. I don't have confidence, like you said, in the earth. I'm not looking at this earthly situation. And that's, him and Silas probably didn't know that they were going to get out. They probably didn't. I think they were prepared to die. Yeah. And so then, spoiler for the We Are conference, because I will be talking about this, but the big verse that I've been loving, which is Philippians 1:22 and on, well, really 21 and on, for to me to live is Christ, to die is gain. But if I am to live on in the flesh, this will mean fruitful labor for me. I do not know which to choose, but I am hard pressed from both directions, having desire to depart to be with Christ, for that is very much better, yet to remain on in the flesh is more necessary for your sakes. And he continues to go on about that, but I love it. For me to live is Christ, to die is gain. You gain patience when you have that mindset. When you have no confidence in the flesh.
And I think that my other verse that I had that I liked was Isaiah 40:31, which it's the very end of, I think it's a pretty common scripture that a lot of people know. But 31 says, but those who wait for the Lord shall find their strength. They shall mount up on wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint.
Remember the Titans, baby.
And so I just like that first part, that they who wait on the Lord shall find their strength. God's going to give you that strength in your patience.
Right.
God's going to give you that strength in the hard times when you're like, okay, well, I'm already in this hard time, so how do I grow closer to God? God will give you that.
Right.
You just have to ask.
Absolutely.
God will give you peace. You just have to ask.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
It's all about proximity to God in the end. which, spoiler alert, is a big majority for a lot of the fruits of the Spirit. But it's great to tell you guys.
They will probably say that a lot.
I think that's all we got for you guys. So I hope God was able to speak to you through this. I think it's so crucial for us to be really being intentional about this. Like, the fruits of the Spirit are so important. And I mean, literally a week of experience that just happened. When you get out of it, man, it's just hard. And it's like, it slaps you in the face when you get back to reality of, man, I was not doing any of these very well. And so I want to encourage you guys, like, everyone's walking through this. Don't feel discouraged. Don't feel like this is an impossible thing to attain. God gave you these fruits of the Spirit so that you could do them and so that you could walk in them. Because it's not you who's going to be doing them. You're doing them through him. You see, you have to be abiding if you ever want to feel like you're going to be able to do this. You're never going to have peace. You're never going to have patience if you do not abide. I mean, that's just the truth. That people you see freaking out on the freeway, it's because they're not abiding. that's there's a lot of truth to that. It doesn't bother you when you can see it through the Philippians 1, to live as Christ, to die as gain. When you see life in the lens of either I'm dying to see Jesus or I'm living to glorify him. When those are your two options, everything else changes. You don't worry about school. You don't worry about work. You don't worry about your coworker who won't stop talking next to you. You don't worry about the one that looks funny or the one that annoys you. Everything changes the minute you just release that desire for earthly things to all be great. And so with that, I just want to say that we are extremely excited for the conference. April 20th, starts at 10 a.m., Northwest Christian Church here in Wichita. I'm very excited. I know God's going to do some really cool things through this. I'm really looking forward to it. We do have a so, and it's a new song by Josiah Queen, who I love, and it's called Altars to Stages. From Altars to Stages? Altars to Stages. I don't think there's a from in there. It's new. It's amazing.
It's really good.
I love it. The message is just super powerful. But I'll link that in the description. As always, we love you guys, and we hope this impacts you. If you know somebody who needs prayer, or if you guys have prayer, please let us know. Text us, leave a comment. I don't really care how you do it. Just let us know if you need prayer. We want to be praying for you. It's the best way we can spend our time, and that's how we live as Christ. So we love you, and we look forward to seeing you next weekend at the We Are Conference. Deuces.